All right, good afternoon, and thank you and welcome to our RTD District A Candidate Forum. My name is Roger with CRL Associates, and this forum is sponsored by the Metro Mayor's Caucus, the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, and the RTD Citizen Advisory Committee. Today, we're talking with candidates in District A. District A covers portions of downtown Denver, Cherry Creek, Glendale, and Lowry. We have three candidates today, Kyle Brodell, Tim Nelson, and Kate Williams. We'll have those candidates make opening remarks in just a minute. Let me quickly go over the format for our forum. We will have 6 questions asked by our panel of moderators who will introduce themselves in just a minute. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer those questions. We'll rotate who starts first throughout that series of 6 questions. Following that, we will take questions submitted from the audience. So if you are watching and want to submit a question, use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We will time, and I'll politely interrupt a candidate if they do go over their time, but we hope not to have to use our mute button, but we do have that, unlike the presidential campaign debates. So before we have the candidates give their opening remarks, let's go to our moderators to introduce themselves, and I'm happy to hand this off to Kelly Brough. Kelly, go ahead.
Thanks, Roger. Hi, I'm Kelly Brough, President and CEO of the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, and I'll hand it to Joe.
Joe, you're muted.
Hi, my name is Joe Limers, and I am the co-chair of the RTD Citizens Advisory Committee, and we report to the board, and I'll hand off to Adam.
Well, thank you. Thrilled to be here. My name is Adam Paul, and I am currently serving as the mayor of Lakewood, Colorado.
All right, thank all three of you for being with us, and thanks to our candidates as well. We're going to have opening remarks by our candidates in alphabetical order to start. Each candidate will have 2 minutes. Kyle, you are first. Go ahead.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be one of your candidates for District A, and I am running for this office because I have practical and sensible solutions to make RTD better for the future. And right now, RTD is not giving the most bang for our buck to the riders and the taxpayers. And I've seen this for the past 3 years as a volunteer member on RTD's advisory committee for people with disabilities. I'd say about 2/3 of the time when us volunteers present ideas to the employees of RTD, it's always, well, we don't know if we can do that. That may be too difficult. You know, we just can't do that. Well, why are you asking for our opinions and our thoughts and ideas if you don't want to take them seriously enough? So that's one reason why I am running for RTD, is to get the employees of RTD to get on board with our volunteer committees. So for example, if we provide an idea and RTD doesn't want to do it, then the employees of RTD need to tell the committees specifically why they don't want to do it, because how are we supposed to go back to the drawing board and make the trains, buses, and accessorides better for you? For example, if you're in a wheelchair, or if you're blind, or a deaf, or a senior citizen, then we don't know what is the best way to go forward. And so that's just one reason. And another reason is I want to streamline the operations of RTD. And one way to streamline it is to consolidate and merge the 8 light rail lines that RTD has. There's really not 8, there's only 4. There's Golden, Santa Fe, I-25, and the Aurora line. And before the virus shut everything down, our current representative, Ms. Williams, she voted to take train service away from Aurora without providing any help to Aurora on what should be done. She just told Aurora through the Denver Post that basically, hey, you're on your own. You're gonna have to think of something up by yourself. Well, I do have a solution. Right now, the Aurora train goes from Peoria all the way down to Ridgegate. There's no need to go that far south. You can stop the train at Bellevue and transfer to go north, or transfer to go south.
Oh, you have to wrap it up.
Bellevue, is that it?
Yep.
All right, that's fine.
Okay. All right, next is Tim. Go ahead, Tim.
Hi, my name is Tim Nelson. Thank you to the Metro Mayor's Caucus, RTD Citizens Advisory Committee, and the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce for hosting this forum. I am grateful for the opportunity to speak to you all, District A residents and any RTD riders who are tuning in. I'm running for the District A board position because public transit has tremendous potential in Metro Denver. When done right, our buses and trains are not just people movers. They are vehicles that, can create greater economic equality by bringing people to jobs that are outside of their immediate neighborhood. They are vehicles that can create access to education for our thousands of DPS students and families who use the school choice process. They can create a healthier population by encouraging walking and biking. They can create a more sustainable future by attracting more people away from their cars. Unfortunately, this is not the reality that exists with RTD right now. I have seen how our system has consistently fallen short of that ideal as a rider, educator, and advocate. Ridership has been declining for quite some time outside of the COVID-19 pandemic, as many residents have come to view the agency as unresponsive to their needs and its service as inconvenient and unaffordable. It is clear that this board needs a voice who can bring progressive values and innovative ideas to move RTD toward its full potential as a transit agency. We need to expedite our routes, improve the experience for riders, and prioritize our core service area here in District A. It is my hope that through this forum and your research online, you will learn about where I stand on important issues to the agency right now and how I could serve as District A board director for the next 4 years. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Kate, it's your turn, 2 minutes. Kate, you're muted. You need to unmute.
Okay, that's different for me to be muted. My name is Kate Williams and I'm the director for District A now. I've been doing it for 3 years and 10 months. It's been quite an experience recently, as I'm sure you can imagine. I work in the field of transit in my day job. I run a nonprofit that helps older adults and persons with disabilities with transit. It's called Dr. Mac. We're not a doctor, but it's the name, the Denver Regional Mobility and Access Council. You can look me up there on the website. There's a lot of crossover between what I do in my career and what I do as the elected representative for District A. That's why I'd like to keep my seat for another 4 years, because I do transit all day, every day. I was asked to run by some advocates in the disability community. I come from a background of both transportation and human services. I came here to run the largest provider of transportation in Douglas County. I moved up to Denver and went to work for the American Council for the Blind, where I actually made home visits. That's where I discovered the Getting There Guide and volunteered for Dr. Mac for a couple of years before they asked me to come in and run it. I got elected to this position at the same time I got my job at Dr. Mac. And so I really had to drink from the fire hose for a while. I think I'm done gagging now. I'm happy to be here talking about my 2 favorite subjects, me and transit. I'm really interested in what both Tim and Kyle have to say, and I'm hoping to hear some ideas from them that will be doable for RTD in the future. Thank you all for inviting me.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to now go to our moderator questions. And first up is Kelly Broff. Kelly, go ahead.
Thanks, Roger. And thanks to all 3 of the candidates today and the incumbent for your willingness to put yourselves out for this opportunity. So this first question comes from the American Association of Retired Persons. And here's the question. What ongoing measures can or should RTD implement to make public transit safer and more accessible to older or disabled riders? And Tim, I think we'll start with you on this question.
Hey, RTD should be practicing universal design to make it its system safe and accessible for all riders, including older riders and riders with disabilities. Three areas I think are especially important to improve: bus stops, easily obtainable information, and on-time performance. RTD's bus stops vary widely in how accessible, protective, and informative they are. Now, of course, cities and landowners bear some responsibility in this matter, but there are a few things that RTD must ensure occur at a base level on every one of its stops. Must position stops in locations that are wide enough so that all riders can reach them without impediment from a sidewalk. Its highest need stops, its most used stops should feature shelters, lighting, and seating, so when people are walking further, that they have somewhere to rest, as opposed to just being forced to stand for a bus. Second, it can be quite challenging to locate information about schedules, bus stops, and transfers using RTD's online platforms. They've proven quite unwieldy. So upgrading this application or seeking a third-party vendor to feature all types of rides, including Access-a-Ride. I know there's a pilot with Access-a-Ride app right now. Clarify route and transfer info and make real-time vehicle location more simple to find in one single place would be a serious boon to riders regardless of their age. And then third, though we see fewer drop routes than in the past, on-time performance is still pretty problematic. When RTD's on-time performance consistently falls below 87%, as it did with both regular and ADA service in 2019, it's putting riders in really challenging situations. Collaborating with local government to ease bus movement, adjusting boarding procedures.
Tim, your time's up. Hate to interrupt, but your 90 seconds is up.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
Thank you, Tim. It goes way faster than you expect. Kate, let's go to you.
Thanks, Kelly. I work with older adults and persons with disabilities every day in my day job, as well as at RTD, and am always aware of how those groups of riders are affected by any RTD policy. I want to make sure that everybody knows that RTD is one of the few transit agencies in the country that is 100% accessible. All of RTD's vehicles are accessible or have accommodations like the high blocks for the light rail, although there is ongoing discussion about how people can use what right now. RTD is looking at what they can do to make the entire transit system safer. There's lots of talk for and against transit police. There are only actually 13 RTD transit police officers. The rest are contracted security. Some people want to get rid of all security. Some want to have more security. No one seems to want to have them armed. RTD is working at putting live video on both buses and trains. I think that will help, especially if we let everyone know that it's there and that all of their actions are monitored live. Another ongoing discussion is masks and restricted number of riders. RTD has not mandated masks because our drivers are not enforcers. We have been adding UV air purifiers, driver shields, backup buses. Oh, that's my time up. Okay, I'll stop. I could go on for a long time.
Thank you, Kate. Kyle, let's go to you.
All right. So yes, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, I'm a volunteer member of the advisory committee for people with disabilities, and so this is a great topic to discuss. So over the course of a year or two, RTD and the city of Denver has come to our committee and asked for our input on what should be done with the renovation of 16th Street Mall. And I recommended that if they're going to rip up the entire 16th Street Mall and do it right, well, let's do it right by putting heating sidewalks into the ground. So what you have is you just have these red tubes that go back and forth that's full of hot water. So when it does snow, you just turn on the switch and it just melts it immediately. And they have this in Vail and Whistler and Aspen and Holland, Michigan, and it is a great tool to use. So for example, if you're a senior citizen and you want to go down 16th Street Mall when it's snowing outside, right now, It could be icy, slippery, there's people shoveling snows and all that kind of stuff. Whereas if there's heated sidewalks in the ground, it'll be dry and very safe. Now, if you're in a wheelchair, this just happened this past February. There's a big storm that occurred, and the local news stations interviewed some people saying, hey, I'm in a wheelchair. I can't get across the street because of the ice and the snow. And so this is one more additional thing that will be very beneficial to people who are in wheelchairs that are using 16th Street Mall, the 16th Street Mall free bus service, and going from Union Station to Civic Center. So that's why, yes.
Sorry.
That's it. It does go by fast.
It does go by fast. The great
Three
news is
candidates.
all three of you had to be interrupted. So
Equal opportunity.
yeah, that's it. I'll turn it to Mayor Paul to ask the next question.
All right, great. Thank you, Kelly. So this question comes from Conservation Colorado. What role do you think RTD should play in decreasing pollution from transportation? Kate, we will start with you.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that RTD is a big piece of decreasing pollution. The average single occupancy vehicle driver in Denver drives at least 500 miles a month and emits 400 grams of CO2 per mile. That same person riding on an RTD train would contribute about 20 grams per mile, or on an RTD bus, about 200 grams per mile. So that's about half as much pollution on a bus and a tenth as much on a train. RTD has a new campaign about to start, asking occasional riders to ride just one more time with this very issue in mind. Transit is the future of climate conservation in this country and around the world. Jarrett Walker has a great book called Human Transit that addresses the same issue. If you've seen the image of 100 people on foot, 100 people in a car, and 100 people on a bus, on a comparative same stretch of road, you get the idea how important transit is. At one point, RTD had the largest fleet of electric buses in the country. We may have been overcome by now. The issue with that is that the batteries that charge those buses are costly and don't have a very long life. Plus the bus has to go back to the garage to get charged. That's why those are only used on the 16th Street Mall right now, and I'll quit.
All right.
I get a prize?
Prizes come at the end, so we keep everybody, in line. So thank you. All right. So next, Kyle.
Yes. So yes, our RTD does have a responsibility to make sure that our environment, both in the dirt and up in the sky, is not polluted. So for an example of this is about 2 weeks ago, I was at the House District 2 Democrat Zoom meeting, and they had asked me, what do I think about having electric buses in RTD? And I said, hey, that's a great idea. I mean, it is the wave of the future. So why not get on board and get electric buses? Now, the problem is, like Kate said, is that right now the batteries aren't the best, but that doesn't mean that we can't have an order of electric buses on file, ready to go when we need to replace diesel buses. So for example, when we retire a diesel bus, then you can bring an electric bus into the fleet. And so that's, you do one out, one in. And I'll just give you another quick analogy, is I come from an airline family. So when an airline buys brand new airplanes, such as the 787, which is fuel efficient, they don't get all 20 at the same time. When one 777 gets too old, they move the 777 out and bring in another fuel efficient 787, which will be much more fuel efficient, better for the environment, and you can go longer distance with less fuel. So yeah, I'm all for making the buses and trains better for the air and the dirt and everything where we live here in Denver.
Great. Thank you, Kyle. And Tim, you will round it out.
RTD should be a leader in decreasing pollution from transportation. One might look at the statistics from the recent quality of life update that was provided to the RTD board, that 50% of all greenhouse gas emissions in Metro Denver come from single occupancy vehicles. while buses account for less than 1%, as an indicator of major success for the RTD network in reducing pollution. I do not see it as so. This reflects a significant percentage of our population that views our public transit as unusable. So RTD must step it up if it is going to be a leader in this space. To begin, RTD must create a more efficient and desirable transit network that will draw residents away from single occupancy vehicles. Replacing a volume of cars, as Kate said, with a single transit vehicle will be beneficial to the environment, but that will only happen if people view transit as a reasonable alternative. The financial cost and time cost of using RTD cannot be a burden if the agency wants to help decrease pollution. In addition, as my opponents have mentioned, we should pursue electrification of our fleet through grants to gradually transition our fleet from diesel to electric. Upfront costs of those lithium-ion batteries and battery electric buses are still quite expensive, about $200,000 more than a diesel bus when we account for charging. And so we do need to pursue outside grants, but in the long term, these are shown by year 12, year 17 to break costs, even point, and also we think about the long-term environmental effects. These could be a major benefit to our region.
All right, thank you all. So for the next question, I'm going to turn it over to Joe Lambert.
My question comes from Mile High Connect's Mobility Task Force. And the question is, what is your experience using transit in the Denver region? First one. If that's me.
Kyle is up first.
All right, very good. So yes, all right, very good. All right, yes. When I worked at the Sheraton Denver downtown, is there an echo there? Okay, not anymore. When I was at the Sheraton Denver downtown hotel for about 2-3 years, I would drive to the Colorado station and take light rail all the way into town down to 16th Street Mall and then walk the 3-4 blocks up to the Sheraton. And then occasionally I would spice it up and I would still take the train from Colorado to the Broadway station and then hop off there and transfer to the number 0 bus, which goes right up Lincoln and to Civic Center station, because the Sheraton was literally across the street. And then other experiences I have is when I arrived back here into Denver on a trip around the world, I would take the train from the airport to the Colorado and 40th train station and then hop on the number 440 bus and take that all the way down to Colorado and Louisiana and walk the next 5-6 blocks till I get to my house. But outside that, it hasn't been too much because since I'm a full-time Uber and Lyft driver, my work brings me all over the metro area. Now that doesn't mean that I'm not going to train stations and picking people up, which I do a lot. I'll pick them up at Colorado and 40th, or over here at Bellevue or County Line, or if I'm out in the Golden area and Lakewood area, I'll pick people up at the train stations there. So as a Uber and Lyft driver, I see all the great opportunities that RTD has, and I will leave it with that.
All right, next up is Kate, I believe.
Thank you, Joe. Hi, how are you? I moved into my current townhome on a major transit route because I know that someday I might be completely dependent on transit. Hopefully we will continue our trend away from cars. Mostly I ride my bike now. I can and have loaded it on the front of an RTD bus. I used to ride to and from my office, but now I walk as I'm working from home. District A is sometimes called the donut hole as we have very little train service. So my primary transit trips are on a bus. In my day job, we've built an app called Getting There that helps with transit choices. And we also do free guided travel training to help Denver residents learn to use public transit. I work with all kinds of people all over the RTD area every day on how to use transit and what transit is available to them. I participate in the Denver Streets Partnership, Bicycle Colorado, DRCOG's Regional Transportation Committee, and also Kyle on the Advisory Council for People with Disabilities. I serve on one of the transportation management associations. I do transit 24/7, so that's my experience with transit and using transit.
I think Tim is up next.
Great. When I moved here, I chose not to purchase a car, and I've remained car-free for environmental reasons since then. That was 2012. So I am transit dependent. By design, I have chosen to live in an area that allows me to access a variety of transit routes. As Kate mentioned, being in District A, that is primarily bus. I take the 10, 12, 15, 20, and 83 bus lines, the A line, and the mall ride regularly. During COVID, my transportation needs have decreased somewhat, but I have continued to ride our buses and trains to navigate the city since late spring. A number of my students, middle school students, also use transit to travel to school, and I hear from them about their experiences, and I will hear more as now DPS students will be supplied with RTD bus passes in the upcoming month. So when I talk about these issues facing the agency and our service needs, my understanding is not removed. It is informed by the experience of actually using the service with regularity.
Thank you. Off to Kelly.
Stop my video. Mute my audio. Button.
Okay, so I think it's actually going to come back to me. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Joe. And again, thank you, candidates. So this next question comes from the RTD Citizens Advisory Committee. What are the 2 top issues in your district, and how do you plan to address them? And first up is Tim.
District A has some of the highest density in the RTD service area, so it should follow that more and more residents are choosing to use transit every year. But that has not been a great, there has not been a great upward trajectory in ridership because of 2 issues. One is frequency and the other is public trust. To the former point, using transit requires consulting a schedule and orienting one's travel and often part of one's day around that. This can prove to be a cumbersome process with routes on their current frequencies in comparison to other options like car and rideshare that are on demand. In order to address this issue, I would champion the reimagined process and a ridership over coverage network. It would be better for District A and RTD financially by reducing subsidies. To the latter point, lack of public trust. I've spoken with a number of residents who are wary of using transit right now because it is perceived as unsafe. Now, it is not if all guidelines are followed, but anecdotally, my recent rides suggest that health guidelines like mask wearing, social distancing are being treated casually. So I'd advocate that RTD implement onboard safety guidelines to indicate appropriate social distancing, more strictly enforce mask wearing by having more personnel on board, providing masks, and imposing fines if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Kate.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that the top 2 issues in District A are homelessness. It affects and is affected by public transit, and it's an issue which continues to grow. And that the second issue is safety for riders, and the 2 issues are often tied together. These are issues that have to do with transit, in this case, not politics. Remember, this is a nonpartisan position. I don't think we have any serious issues with RTD's local service, although there will be some service modifications in the January service plan. But RTD is intent on moving people, not moving vehicles. And there may be some riders who have to modify their travel patterns as ridership continues to be at record lows. But we have people literally on our streets who have no safe place to live. And it's been an option for some to ride on a warm, safe RTD bus all day and often into the night. That's not a new thing. It's going to be more obvious as bad weather makes RTD vehicles more attractive. If you're following the board meetings, this has been a repeat topic. and not one that I have personally found an answer to. I hear from people who are strongly opposed to any reduction in security and from people who want all security removed. I hear all sides of both of these issues from riders, from drivers, from my partners who work with our homeless population, from other elected officials, and from all of those who call my office both at my day job and at RTD. My only response right now is that we all need to work together to find new and innovative ways to conquer these ongoing issues.
Thank you. And Kyle, you will round it out.
All right, very good. The top two issues that come to mind for me is the number of buses are available. When I go door to door, talking to the voters, one of the biggest things that they say all the time is that there's not enough buses out there. And what they like to see are smaller buses. Because if you have smaller buses, then you can have higher frequency. There's higher frequency, there's higher ridership, and ultimately a higher fare box revenue at the end of the tunnel. So that's one big thing that we have to look at, is maybe if we can just not always purchase those big, beautiful buses, but just size it down to smaller buses that can go through the tinier streets. That may be a possibility. But the linchpin to that is how fast does RTD's human resources department hire new bus drivers? If HR doesn't hire enough people fast enough, then we can't provide this good service in our district. So you have two things that are correlated together, and to make it better for everyone, since we're paying taxes and we're voting for it and we are riding it. Now, the other thing, quickly, because I probably have about 30 seconds, is the fares. Is that right now, this is another thing, going door to door, people say that the fares are too high. So why don't we recommend saying drop the fares, like going out to the airport, $10.50. You still have to pay $10.50 from the 61st and Pena station to go to the airport, even though that's 5 miles. Or if you are way down here, and I think my time is up.
All right, thank you all very much. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Lammers for the next round.
In my spot here, my question is once again from Mile High Connects Mobility Task Force, and it is RTD has a service area of 2,342 square miles. Should RTD concentrate, I'm going to change it because I mistyped it, concentrate on frequency, I'm sorry guys, on most used routes at the cost of less popular routes, or on covering a wide geographic area. So basically, where you want to put your money, in the popular routes or in the geographic coverage. And I believe that Tim is next.
Kate actually is up first on this one.
Thank you.
I'm messing this whole thing up.
You're doing okay. These are all things that we have to talk about one way or the other, so I'm game. It is a fact that RTD has a really broad service area. The issue comes back to something that has been a point for me throughout this whole discussion, which is that RTD is about moving people. We're not about moving vehicles. If there's ridership requests, then RTD should provide service there. And so if the question is a yes or no, I believe that yes, RTD should provide service on the most used routes. However, I also think that there's a whole variety of ways that we can continue to provide service that we're not doing now. We do partner with Uber. You can call an Uber on your app. The average RTD bus ride costs $27 in the greater metro area, and the average Uber ride costs $12. Or Lyft, sorry, Uber Lyft. let's give a fair shake there. I'd also like to see us do more with Dr. Cog's van pool options and any ideas that have not come up yet. We are living in a world where we need to adjust rapidly. And so I think any opportunity to provide service other than a 40-foot bus that only has one person on it would be a good idea. Thanks.
Okay, Roger, I'll see if I can get this one right. I think Tim is next.
I would agree with, am I
Go
good?
ahead, Ken. Go ahead, Tim.
Yep, treating all routes across the network similarly is a misguided strategy. So yes, we do need to prioritize our most used routes over geographical coverage. RTD has seen routes succeed because of reliability, riders' needs, and in some cases, transit-friendly infrastructure. As a result, increased frequency on these routes has a higher likelihood of drawing further ridership, in addition to retaining the current ridership. An added bonus for the agency would be cost efficiency. Instead of running an empty bus that has to be highly subsidized. Critical factors for ridership do not exist on some of our less popular routes. Logistics and geography of running a route through a low density neighborhood, for instance, are challenging, may lack walkability, and the space a vehicle would need to traverse might make it too slow moving to be an attractive alternative to a car. Likewise, as we have seen with some of the fast track corridors, a train that runs through sparsely populated areas does not have captive ridership. Those things won't suddenly change. And the last thing I'd add is that RTD system map is not the holy grail. There are some spaces in which RTD needs to look at the efficiency and destinations in order to make adjustments and perhaps draw higher ridership. It would be important to think about these long-term projections of transit-dependent individuals and population centers instead of treating our current service plan as infallible.
Okay, now I think my odds of getting this right are pretty good. I think it's Kyle's turn.
Yes, thank you, Joe. Yes, for the foreseeable future, RTD will have to focus on the routes that are used the most. And as Kate and Tim were saying, that right now it's best to get people onto the most popular routes, because if they see that other people are using the buses and the trains, then they may say, hey, why don't I take a bus down this way? Because I've had very good success on the number 10 or the number 15 or the number 40 or on the Southeast line. Well, why not do it if I have to go out to Golden or out to Lakewood or out to Thornton? We can make it possible. Now, the problem though is, like all us are saying, that people up in Evergreen and Conifer and Boulder and Golden will have some problems because I just saw on RTD's website for January 2021 changes that they are thinking about cutting on the twice daily service to Conifer and twice daily service to Evergreen and 4 times between Golden and Boulder. But they do have a temporary solution before things get better, and that's possibly to partner up with taxis and Uber and Lyft through a voucher program. And I'm glad that I did see RTD talk about that, because I did have one person tell me over the course of walking door to door and all that good stuff, that he was saying, hey, you should really take a look at seeing what we can do with partnering with Uber and Lyft, because Uber and Lyft has demonstrated that they can go to so many far more places while complementing the buses and the train. So it's a good partnership to look into the future, and I'll stop with that.
All right.
And off to Kelly again, is that right?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
right? Okay,
Thank you, Joe. The question I'm going to ask comes from the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, my own organization. We have 3,000 members with about 400,000 employees who work for those companies. Economic vitality and transportation go hand in hand. Can you talk about what kinds of commitments you'll make towards advancing first and last mile solutions to ensure access to both housing and job opportunities, which are fundamental to economic prosperity? And Kyle, we're going to start with you.
All right. Yeah, so there are ways that we are already doing that. You've got your own car that you can drive to park and ride. You got buses. You got people that can use their own bike and leave it at if they're going to a train station, they can leave it there at a station and lock it up. Or if you are going to a bus stop, you can hop on one of those Lime scooters, those Uber scooters, and get closer to the bus stop. Now the problem comes that there's always jockeying for room on the road, and if there's room available to share safely between a car and a bike lane, hey, I'm all for that. But we got to make sure that it's safe for everyone, because if it's not safe, there's going to be a lot of accidents coming into the future. Now, another awesome idea that I have is, take, for example, the University Station. Right now, there's absolutely no way to get on the other side of I-25 to where South High is, and also where the Walsh Park neighborhood is. If we were to, for example, build a bridge or a tunnel that goes up and over I-25, you'd open up a whole new section of residential neighborhoods who could come down to the University Station, and there's also other buses that are there, so they can go up and down Bucktel Boulevard. So we got to start looking at where can we tweak our buses and our trains to make it even better. And that's one way that we can make that last mile, first mile better, is if we open up these opportunities, even if you just walk.
Thanks, Kyle. We'll go to you, Tim.
These first and last mile issues can be major impediments to more ridership, right? How many times have we heard riders say, I would only ride transit if, and so instead I'll take a car or I'll take a ride share. But leading the space is not only doing what is best for RTD in terms of ridership, but the region. As director, I'd make 3 commitments. One, RTD needs to be flexible and creative to the needs of different areas in partnership with the municipalities where these services are operating. So that's the use of cutaway buses, vans, and vouchers to go to and from transit, not just between points of interest within a service area as FlexRide is currently structured. Utilizing bike shares, pedicabs, scooters with a fleet of adaptive scooters for those who feel comfortable. Second, we need to investigate the possibility of making connector services free with an RTD fare, which would require local financial support, of course, but may result in more people opting onto those things. Finally, I'd advocate for RTD to be much more active in transit-oriented development. Housing and job opportunities won't exist unless we have public entities that are willing to be leaders in this space. We should design a framework for affordable transit-oriented development, so tying leases to the restricted valuation of affordable housing rather than the market value will result in fewer upfront benefits for RTD. However, in the long term, residents of these units may be more inclined to use transit instead of residents of market rate units, and RTD would be serving a major need in the region. And of course, these people would have access to jobs as a result of having housing.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you so much, Tim. On to you, Kate.
Thank you, Kelly. First and last mile is a really innovative field. I served on the first mile, last mile task force, and we looked at ideas that have not yet made it to the streets. Who knew 2 years ago that we would have scooters running all over Denver? There is a TOD group at RTD now that is working to align transit with development that includes affordable housing. We need not only to have workspaces that have access to transit, but housing that has access to transit. So that involves smart land use planning. And my commitment is to partner more with municipalities to look at what they are planning and what RTD can bring to that planning table as our region morphs. We have recently, because of COVID, unfortunately, moved away from a lot of people traveling to downtown areas. I'd like to see RTD help with looking at how we can bring transit to where people are working and where they need it the most. There is a new app out now that crosses over between CDOT's regional buses and RTD's local service. It should be on the street any day now. So that's my commitment, to keep moving that innovation forward.
Thank you, Kate. And I'm turning it to Roger for Q&A.
All right, thank you very much. My alarm went off. We do not have any questions yet in the Q&A queue. So hopefully those that are participants now will start typing in your questions, and I'll see if any of our moderators have thought up a question they'd like to ask.
I thought of a question.
Go for it, Joe.
I would like to ask the candidates, given the complex funding mechanisms involved in transit, need to do in RTD in the next 5 to 6 years, along with taxpayer resistance to any kind of tax rate rises. How do you all plan to, I love the ideas, but they all cost a lot of money. So what are your proposals for how do you work through all those complexities? It's not a simple task.
Let's go to Kyle first.
All right. That is an excellent question. I get that asked all the time. And one way to do it without raising taxes is I would like to go to the voters of Colorado and say, hey, just for a decade, why don't we take all the tax revenue from marijuana, alcohol, tobacco, and lottery and apply that to all our transportation infrastructure projects here in our great state. So each area would have plenty of money to upgrade their airports, their roads, and their trains. So for us right here, we would take our tax revenue from marijuana and lottery and alcohol and apply it to RTD. Now, this would be a great way to do it, because if we're going to be having visitors from out of state visit Colorado, why not have them participate in paying the taxes to help keep our infrastructure good and going for the future? Because right now, I don't see too many people voting for additional tax hikes, as the past few elections, Democrats, unaffiliates, and Republicans have said, no, we don't want to raise taxes here. We don't want to raise taxes there. So we got to work it out.
All right, Kate, and we're only giving you 60 seconds. I should have mentioned that. 60 seconds for these Q&As. So Kate, you're next. Or Tim, you're next. I'm sorry, Tim, you're next.
Great. Yeah, I would not support another tax increase for 2 reasons. One, would not strike to the core of the challenges that are facing transit, which is catastrophically low government funding and human behavior. The former will require elected officials here in Colorado to fight for COVID relief funds, which seems a bit up in the air right now, given what's going on in Washington, and then the Invest in America Act to add transit funding. Second, to address human behavior, we can't apply a blanket sales tax. Require more thoughtful mechanisms, like raising the cost of parking, which is in the Climate Action Task Force proposal, raising the licensing fee for rideshare. It's currently a little over $100,000. Applying a surcharge to each rideshare trip, and raising the gas tax, which has been static since 1991. This could lead more residents to use transit, and at the very least, if they do not choose to use transit, it will generate revenue.
Thank you, Kate. It's your turn now.
Thank you. That's a great question, Joe. There are so many things that we need to do. I'd like everybody to know that right now, the fare is about 20% of RTD's revenues. So I'd love to see RTD be free for everyone, but then we have to figure out where that 20% comes from. And one of the great oxymorons right now is that transit is in fact funded predominantly by sales tax. And so the largest generator of sales tax in this area is the sale of automobiles. So we're kind of in a catch-22 there. We need to look at other ways to fund transit, and that goes back to taxes. And people in Colorado are notoriously adverse to any tax increase. So that's an issue that needs to be worked on, not just for transit, but for schools and for public services. And if we can make some inroads there in how we fund things, transit would be one of the first beneficiaries.
All
I
right.
have not been able to
That's it.
say how yet. Okay.
All right. We have a question in the queue, and I'm going to call on Megan to ask that question. Megan, what did we have submitted? And then Adam, I see that you have a question also. We'll come back to you.
I believe Dorothy was actually going to handle the
Dorothy.
question for this district.
All
I'm
right,
ready.
Dorothy.
The question is, do you believe RTD should be run like a business or like a public service?
And so now we're going to go to Tim first.
Right. There's no doubt that RTD is going to need public funding. Simply saying that it's going to be funded for our riders. Given the current attitude towards cars and how car use is, taxed in that cost, it's not realistic to say, all right, riders are going to bear all this burden, especially considering that a number of riders are lacking in some financial means. So I think it should be a public entity run with a private mentality. Specifically, the goal needs to be to continually increase ridership. Accepting ridership declines is not sufficient. Saying, well, cars are on the road, or well, this challenge is in place, will not be sufficient because that will doom the agency long term.
Okay, Kate, you're next.
Thanks. I think that transit is a social determinant of health. I think that a food bank is no good if you can't get there. I think that mental health clinics are no good if you can't get there. So I think myself that public transit is a social service and should be considered as one. As we move forward into more and more people needing public transportation, as we try and move away from single occupancy vehicles, I think we ought to change our outlook on public transportation and believe that it is a right for everyone, like water and power.
All right, thank you, Kyle.
All right. It should be both. For example, RTD does not act like a business when it comes to advertising. And I have a perfect example of this. When I'm an Uber and Lyft driver during a winter storm, I get constant requests from people at the airport asking to be picked up and brought to Union Station or Wheat Ridge or wherever. But what they don't realize is that there is a perfectly good train that they can take all the way to Union Station, make a transfer, and go over to Wheat Ridge. So what RTD has to do from a business perspective is to start advertising a whole lot more and start working, for example, with the airport and say, hey, people who live in Denver and who are visiting, you can take the train all the way to downtown or Thornton or Golden or on the southeast side of town. If we don't start working from a business mindset, we won't be able to provide a good public agency to the people who really do need it. So it's correlated together that if we don't do enough all around, then it will falter at some point.
All right. Mayor, I was going to come to you, but we are almost out of time and we're going to have to go to closing remarks. So that is what we'll do. And closing remarks, Tim is first for closing remarks. Each candidate gets 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. Presidential election years, what happens on the national stage? Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties. My apologies. What happens on a national stage often overshadows local politics. But as we well know, these local matters can just be just as impactful to our everyday lives. RTD is a prime example of this. Over the past decade in Metro Denver, we have seen our home and rent prices increase substantially, roads become overcrowded, and air quality worsen. Meanwhile, one of the primary tools to alleviate some of these challenges has fallen behind. RTD has not innovated rapidly enough to attract riders through convenient, reliable, and affordable service. We understand this in District A, and operating as though everything will simply get better or return to normal will not be sufficient. We need a board director who focuses on the most impactful transit solutions. We need a board director who will make prudent financial choices. We need a board director who will bring practical and innovative solutions to tackle the problems facing RTD today. As a frequent rider and advocate, I understand where our system stands, and will use my expertise and values to guide decision-making that creates a better network for all riders. You can find more information online at nelsonforrtd.com. I hope I can count on your vote. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tim. Kate, you are next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Roger. I want to tell Tim that District A has 202,000 constituents now, by the way. When I meet every Tuesday morning with other elected officials in the area, it's often a laugh that I have the biggest geographic area, the most constituents, and make the least amount of money. I also want everybody on this call to know that bus stops are on the city and county right of way and do not belong to RTD. I get calls all the time and have developed a great working relationship with the 5 city council people who share the same area, because I often have to bring them in on a call about bus stops. I'd like both Kyle and Tim to know that this is a tough job. I just want you to be aware of that. You have to take phone calls at 4:30 in the morning from someone whose bus didn't come. You have to remember that it is a nonpartisan position at all times. You have to listen to people that you may not agree with in a number of ways when you're talking about transit. I've done it. Both of you can do it. I'm not sure why you want to right about now, but having looked at both of your websites, I think that you have some great ideas, and I'm glad to see that there's interest in moving transit forward. I'd like to thank everybody for having me here and for listening to my 24/7 passion for transit. I hope that you'll vote for me and let me do it some more.
All right, Kate, thank you very much. Kyle, it's your turn. 2 minutes.
All right, well, I am very excited about the future for RTD, but if we're gonna make it better, we have to start with tweaking and streamlining with what we have right now. Now, obviously, it's gonna be a big problem. RTD just announced 2-3 weeks ago that they're gonna cut about 600 jobs at headquarters and frontline people. So it's gonna be a give and take for a while, but that doesn't mean we can't plan for the future. And that's one big thing that I think that RTD and the city of Denver has not done good for the past 20, 30 years. For example, I've shared this with many people going door to door and around the district. Right now, there's a 60,000 person development that's going to be built on the other side of E470, just south of the airport. I remember from a public forum last fall that I asked CDOT and RTD, hey, what are you going to do with these 60,000 people? Are you going to put in trains? Are you going to widen I-70? What are you going to do? Well, they just sat there like a bump on a log and said nothing because they didn't know what to do. So what we got to do is start planning for the future, because in 20 to 30 years, it will all be built up and it'll be too late. And then RTD will have to come back and, well, we just don't know what to do. There's no space, there's no land. Well, that's why if we start talking about building certain transit lanes here and there and trains and adding bus routes here, then we will be better prepared for the future. But we gotta still do both, deal with the present and deal with the future. So that's what I'm excited about, and I hope to get your vote and make RTD better.
All right, thank you all very much. Thanks to our candidates, Kate, Tim, and Kyle, for joining us this afternoon. I also want to thank our great panelists, Joe Lammers, Mayor Adam Paul, and Kelly Bruff with the Chamber, and our sponsoring organizations, the Metro Denver Chamber of Commerce, the RTD Citizens Advisory Committee, and the Metro Mayor's Caucus. We And also, I want to thank the audience who joined us today. It was a good discussion. I appreciate the obvious thought that each candidate put into their answers in preparing for this forum today. We will be posting the video of this forum on YouTube, and all of the sponsoring organizations, as well as other community partners, will be sending out and publicizing the link, so folks that missed the forum today will have a chance to watch it another time. So on that note, have a great day. Thanks, everyone.